everyone. This is John Daly. I'm here again with Bernie Goldberg for another episode of the No BS Zone. How's it going today, Bernie?
So far, so good, John.
Good, good. So we're
One,
going to
one
talk
never knows,
about some, what's that?
one never knows how it will turn out, but so
Yes,
far, so
yeah.
good.
Bernie and I, for everybody watching, we're just kind of commiserating about some things we're both going through right now, right before we went on. So we're doing all right, though. We're going to be all right. So we are going to talk about some political topics today, beginning with Joe Biden and the question of whether or not he's going to stay in the presidential race. As we've both been pointing out in our columns, Bernie, the polls show that more and more Americans think this is a really bad idea. And there was recently a rather important column written by an influential journalist on this matter. Can you talk a bit about that a bit, Bernie?
David Ignatius of the Washington Post, who is an iconic figure in Washington journalism. He is a fan of Joe Biden. That's important. He likes Joe Biden. And he said in his column that Joe Biden should drop out because he's too old. He should not run. And the important part of this, John, is that because of his influence, because of his prominence, David Ignatius may get Democrats to say publicly what they've only been saying privately so far, that Joe Biden is too old and should drop out. Look, as far as I'm concerned, he's one fall away, one incoherent statement away from being forced out by people in the party. But so far, they haven't said anything. No prominent Democrat has come out and said he should drop out. So the question is, will he stay in or not? But if not, what happens next? Well, before Joe Biden would finish his announcement that he's dropping out, Gavin Newsom would be announcing that he's in. The governor of Michigan may announce that she's in. But what about Kamala Harris? If Kamala Harris, she can't be pushed aside, even though she has a lower approval rating than Joe Biden. But if she doesn't wind up replacing Joe Biden, if anybody else does, I guarantee this, you are going to hear, oh, a black woman can't be president of the United States, and you'll hear charges of racism, which are usually reserved for Republicans, and it's going to be an interesting car crash to watch. Now, one more thing, John. This is not a prediction. I want to make very clear this is not a prediction. But at this point, I don't think it's an insane scenario. Joe Biden says he's dropping out, and on the last day of his term in office, he pardons Hunter Biden. Now, I want to know what you think of that and anything else that went on so far. I know it's not likely, but I think it's possible.
It's that's something I actually hadn't thought about a lot until you brought it up. Like you put it in a note about this episode, and I hadn't really, but it does seem to make sense to me. President Biden would probably take less heat for doing that kind of thing on his way out the door, than he would if he was still president. And of course, there'd be far fewer political consequences from this as well. So yeah, I wouldn't, I think it's a definite possibility. One important part I think you in that Ignatius piece was that I think he brought up the point that if Biden were to stay in, he could put in danger what David saw as a very important part of his legacy, and that was beating Donald Trump, putting him on the sidelines. And I think that's part of the issue too. It's not just the age, but he sees another candidate as having a much easier time with Trump or whoever the Republicans put forward.
But here's the crazy part. Democrats want to beat Donald Trump more than almost anything else. We agree on that?
Yeah.
So who do they pick? Who is leading the field? Who looks like he's going to be the nominee to run against Donald Trump? Joe Biden. who almost everybody in the United States, including most Democrats, don't want to run. There's something crazy about this. They want to beat Donald Trump more than anything else, and they pick a candidate who almost nobody wants to run. I know that this doesn't connect for me. And on the other side, who do Republicans, what's one of the highest, if not the highest, goal of Republicans? To beat Joe Biden. And they pick a candidate who, according to an Associated Press poll, 53% of Americans say they won't vote for Donald Trump under any circumstances. So Republicans want to beat Joe Biden more than almost anything else, and they pick a candidate whom 53% say they would not vote for him under any circumstances, and 11 more percent say they probably wouldn't vote for him. This is insane. This doesn't add up. I'm writing a column, and in the column, I'm saying this may work on some other planet, but not on planet Earth. It makes no sense.
So here's a question I think we've talked about before, though. You said that there's nothing Republicans want any more than beating Joe Biden. Is that true? Yes. I sometimes if you were to ask them, people that are all in for Trump, I think they'd probably say that. But at the same time, I don't know. I get a lot of sense, and granted, this is all internet talk and other things, but it seems like a lot of people seem like they would rather just go with Trump, even if even if they don't think he can beat Joe Biden.
Well,
I mean, a lot of people have bought into the notion that he won last time. I think a lot of people sort of cling to that notion, even though they know that Trump lost, deep down. But yeah, it just seems like there is such a thirst and this cheering section for the Trump brand and Trump himself and MAGA world and all this stuff that I'm not even sure. I'm not convinced that winning is their top priority. I think there's some sort of almost virtue in times at being the underdog, the perpetual underdog who's fighting against the machine and all that stuff. And what do you think about that?
I don't have it at hand, but there was a poll recently that I recall that said something like 81% of Republican primary voters say that uh, beating Joe Biden is a very important uh, priority for them. I don't have it at hand, but I'm pretty sure I have that right. Now, if that many Republicans say look, they may want Donald Trump under any circumstances. You're right about that. But they want to beat Joe Biden. They want to beat Joe Biden. And yet, more than half the country says they won't vote for Donald Trump. That doesn't connect to rational people. It obviously somehow connects to people who want to beat Joe Biden and want Donald Trump to run against him. That isn't working for me. That isn't working for anything rational. But they want what they want, and they want Donald Trump to be the nominee as of now, and I think likely in the future. And what are you going to do? It doesn't make any sense. Mathematically, it makes no sense when more than half the electorate says they won't vote for Donald Trump under any circumstances. The word was definitely in the poll. They definitely will not vote for Donald Trump. Again, another 11% say they probably won't vote for him. So that's 53, 64% almost certainly won't vote for Donald Trump. And that's who the Republicans want to run.
Yeah.
Sorry, my head is starting to hurt.
Going back to the issue with Biden for a minute, about whether or not he's going to stay in or not. It's whenever we talk about this topic or whenever I write about this topic, I think about A.D. Stoddard, who we had on as a guest a while back. She's been pointing out the audacity of Biden running again for a long time, and all such warnings had fallen on deaf ears for a very long time. At least, I think Democrats were talking about it behind the scenes. The polls were obviously showing it, but now we're pretty far into traditional primary season. I mean, there's still a lot of time left, but there finally seems to be this real momentum behind this movement. It feels to me like it might be too late to have a proper Democratic primary. Maybe I'm wrong, but if Biden were to bail and every day he stays in, it makes this more difficult. I do wonder if party leaders and people at the DNC would end up being the ones deciding on a nominee. It sounds a little weird, but that format would actually be a lot closer to how primaries used to work several decades ago. I think Democratic voters probably wouldn't like that very much, but do you see that as a possibility, or do you think we could still have an actual primary?
I think they might have influence, but what you're describing goes back to the smoke-filled rooms where the
Right.
party bosses pick the nominee. That ship has sailed, John. That ship went bye-bye a long time ago. So no, I don't think that's the case. And if they tried that, there'd be a revolution, not a a revolution within the ranks. Uh, and again, I want to get back to something I said. If Kamala Harris somehow does not replace Joe Biden, if he decides to drop out, look out, look out. It's going to be really nasty because she's the vice president. Why shouldn't she get the nomination? Why shouldn't voters want her? And if they don't, it must be for only one reason, they will say. And that one reason is the color of her skin. And that will be sort of almost fun to watch because Democrats are always pulling that stuff on Republicans. But if they pull it on each other, that would be pay-per-view as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, and it wouldn't even be it wouldn't even be the race card. It would also be the sexist card, unless
Exactly.
Biden, right?
She's a woman. She's a woman of color. Oh, you want Gavin Newsom, a white male, straight white man? I would pay a lot of money and watch it on close, pay-per-view television.
Yeah, yeah, it'll be interesting to see for sure. Let's talk a little more. You brought up Hunter Biden earlier. He was recently charged with crimes relating to how he lied to get a gun license. Bernie, what are your thoughts on Hunter's latest legal challenges, and do any of the other impending charges interest you that people are talking about regarding Hunter?
All right. This may offend some of our intelligent, loyal followers, but here goes. I never can, and I've written about this more than once. I've never shown much concern about Hunter Biden. I want to know if what Hunter Biden did leads to Joe Biden. So if on the gun charges, if the judge gives him a slap on the wrist, says, don't ever do this again, and gives him no jail time, stay with me, everybody. I'm not going to lose any sleep over that. That'd be fine with me. If not fine with me, I'm not going to go out and yell bloody murder that the fix is in. But the tax evasion charges that were in the deal that he made, misdemeanors on late filing, that is totally BS. And this is the no BS zone, so I'm calling that out. If you or I set up 20 shell companies to divert money and then didn't pay tax on over $1 million, and when they found out about it, the lawyer told us, pay it now before anything goes any further. And we paid it, and then we're charged with filing late. No, we'd be charged with felony tax evasion. And if he isn't charged with that, then I'll start to think the fix is in. But again, what it comes down to, as far as I'm concerned, is what did Joe know and when did he know it?
Yeah, no, I'm pretty close to what you're saying. I mean, my take on Hunter Biden has been pretty much the same all along. He's a guy with a well-established history of corruption, not just legal corruption, but moral, ethical corruption. My view generally of him is that he should be treated no differently by our justice system than anyone else. And where it does look like he was treated differently because of who his father is, that should be investigated. And where there's evidence of Joe Biden being in cahoots with his son, or leaning on our justice system to cut Hunter a break, that should be investigated. And a lot of this stuff is being investigated at the moment, and that's good. I'm definitely interested in seeing what's discovered. But unlike a lot of people on the right, I do want to see compelling evidence before, demanding criminal charges. It's sort of interesting. A lot of people on the right, including some of the people in the comments section, they don't really they see all the charges against Donald Trump as it's a political hit job. None of these things are real. But it's we have. I mean, it's. I heard some people on the other side say that there is no evidence at all that Biden had any improper, Joe Biden had any improper dealings with his son. There is some evidence in it. It's not. I don't think it's totally compelling yet. There's evidence, as you wrote in your recent column, that Joe has lied a lot about what he's known and what he hasn't. But
Hold on,
lying's not a
hold
crime.
on, hold on. I
Yeah,
did not write anything in my recent column about Hunter Biden or Joe Biden. I wrote about a kid named Bozo,
that's
and
right.
Bozo Jr., and his father was also a bozo. That had nothing to do with Hunter Biden and Joe Biden. I resent that remark on your part.
I'm sorry, I got that confused. But
Now, let me ask you a question. What evidence, flimsy as it is, are you talking about?
oh, just the idea that he I believe Joe Biden was saying in the early days that he had never even talked to any of
Right,
Hunter's
exactly,
colleagues,
exactly.
and that's clearly blown up at this point for sure.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. The story that he's been telling that he knew nothing changed to, well, that was a lie. As I said, look, even if you go with what I said, that he'd be the only father in America who didn't ask his son, how's it going at work? Or if you go with one of our subscribers said, well, of course he knew what his son was doing. Why would he have to ask? Okay, one way or the other. He knew what his son was doing. So they changed the story to he was never in business with his son. Let me tell you something, that better be true, because even though I'm not a proponent of impeachment on BS charges, that would be, if they could prove not taking money, that might not be an impeachable offense. That would be another lie. But if he took money and then changed any policy, that's definitely an impeachment offense. But of course, even if that were the case, and we're deep into speculation, let me make clear, Democrats wouldn't vote to convict him even then, because we're so hyper partisan that, you can have a president, either party, committing murder on videotape, and the opposite party, his party, wouldn't vote to convict him.
No, it's yeah. There's another part of the story. I was gonna say this till the end, but it sort of fits right in, and I think we're doing pretty good on time. But another part of the story regarding the Biden and the Biden crime machine and everything. The House Republicans have started an impeachment inquiry into Joe Biden. It's not entirely clear at this point what exactly the grounds for impeachment are. We've had some, suggestions, some speculation, some ideas of what they're going with, but I think there are certainly things worth looking into, and including some of the things we touched on just a minute ago. And there are investigations that are already being done, but it seems Kevin McCarthy was under a lot of pressure, including by Donald Trump himself, according to reports, along with House Republicans, to get the ball rolling on this. Bernie, what are your thoughts on this? This is still very early. They haven't declared that they're going to impeach Biden yet, but they seem to be moving in that direction. What do you think about this?
I think you're absolutely right. This was a pressure play. Kevin McCarthy is the weakest speaker in recent memory, uh, maybe ever. For all I know, I'm not a historian, but maybe ever. He's got oh, he's got so little support, uh, so little leeway in his party. He's got so few votes that he could give up. When the crazy wing of the party demands something, he has to think hard about it, because if he doesn't go along with them, in this case, an impeachment inquiry, all they need is one vote, and they said they do it to have it. one person stands up and says, I want to vote on a new speaker. I want to vote on removing Speaker McCarthy. They'll do it. So Kevin McCarthy should have never taken the speaker job under the circumstances. He should have said, I play this movie all the way through in my head and I see bad voodoo down the road. He should have never done it. But he did it, I think, and he didn't call for a House vote, you noticed, on it, because he'd never get the House vote. Not only would no Democrats vote for it, about 18 Republicans who won their seats in districts, in congressional districts that Joe Biden won, he wouldn't even get those 18 Republicans, so he didn't hold a vote in the House. I don't think this is going to end well. If they don't find anything, if they find something, man, that was the smartest move they could have made. But if they don't find anything, even though it was an inquiry, people hear the word impeachment. That's what regular folks hear, impeachment. Oh, the Republicans wanted to impeach Joe Biden, and it didn't work because they didn't have any evidence or enough evidence. I don't think this was a good move, but I understand why they did it because of what you said and what I said. Kevin McCarthy felt that he had no choice.
And I think there's a lot of energy among the Republican base probably for this too. And a lot of Republicans who are interested in impeaching Joe Biden, I think feel justified in doing so, not because at this point there's adequate evidence of abuses of power that warrant impeachment, but I think rather because they see that Donald Trump was impeached twice, and so what's good for the goose is good for the gander, as far as they're concerned. And I think this, in a weird way, helps Trump politically. I think that if Biden's corruption or alleged corruption can be seen as the public equivalent of Trump's corruption, because that would they see that as a good thing because Biden would go into the general election with supposedly similar baggage to what Trump has. I don't think that's true. I don't think most people see it that way, but I think that's the thought of a lot of Republicans too. If there's a lot of that, whataboutism stuff everywhere. And I feel that if they can sort of tarnish Joe Biden to the point where he doesn't look more acceptable than Trump, that's a good thing for them.
I think that's a big mistake. Not what you're saying, but what they're
Right.
thinking. Look, there are two things the impeachment of Donald Trump, Republicans may have thought it was, you know, a political hit job, but independents, I don't think were turned off by it. If they go down this road, if they actually impeach him, I don't see that happening either because of the Republicans who won't vote for it. But if they wind up impeaching him, that will hurt the Republicans, unlike a Trump impeachment hurting the Democrats. I don't think that hurt the Democrats. I think this will hurt Republicans. I think two things you can count on to hurt Republicans: an impeachment inquiry or an impeachment vote that goes nowhere, and shutting down the government. No matter what, no matter how noble the reason, Republicans always take the hit for shutting down the government. So I think both would be a bad political move.
No, I think that's correct. So last topic, Joe Manchin. He's currently weighing his political future, and he said in a recent meeting that he'll either run again for the Senate as an independent, drop out of politics altogether, or run as a third party candidate for the presidency. Bernie, what do you think is most likely?
I don't know that I'm going to answer that, but let me say this. If he decides to run for the Senate as an independent, that won't affect the big picture. If he drops out of politics and says bye-bye, that won't affect the big picture. But if he runs as a third party candidate, that will affect the big picture. He probably won't win, but he may decide who does win and who does lose. I don't know if he's ready to drop out of politics. That might be the smartest thing to do because if he runs in West Virginia, where the Republican candidate is beating him in the polls by a lot. He's likely to lose that election. If he runs as a third party candidate, what's he going to accomplish? He's going to be the guy who helped elect Donald Trump, possibly, you know, or helped elect Joe. He's going to be a target of people for influencing the election one way or the other. Dropping out of politics may be a hard road for him, but it may be that just as Joe Biden dropping out and thinking he's the best president since FDR, if Joe Manchin dropped out, he can go out as a long-time icon in West Virginia politics and call it a day. Which it's going to be, I don't know. What do you think?
I don't know. I wrote a piece on this website a couple weeks ago on the prospect of a strong third party candidate with the help of the No Labels organization becoming a, I there's the polling shows that there's definitely an appetite for this. I'm not convinced by any means that any of this will actually happen. No Labels is working on getting, a candidate if needed on all 50 ballots, but I think they got a long way to go still. But I do think there is a better chance of this happening, a third party candidate sort of rising to the occasion and actually getting some traction. I think there's a better chance of that happening next year than it has up until now in our history, because of how disillusioned voters are by the binary prospect of Biden versus Trump. I don't think this would happen unless it does end up being Biden versus Trump, which, despite everything we've talked about here, is probably still the likely outcome. But yeah, you bring up a good point about he could throw Donald Trump the election because Manchin is a Democrat. If No Labels was to put forth, I think, a Republican, there would be the other side of that coin where that could possibly throw it to Joe Biden. So yeah, it feels like right now the stigma with the third party candidate is that, coming from Ross Perot, I think all those years ago, is that it's always that person's always going to play spoiler, and that not enough Americans are going to see this as anything other than a spoiler opportunity to give it a chance. And I think that's what makes me think we might not get one, whether it's Manchin or anybody. But what do you think about that?
I do think that if you put it to the voters, do you want a third party candidate? Simple question. They'd say yes, because of what you described. The mood is such. Biden v. Trump 2.0, stop. I don't want it. So I think if you put it to a vote of the voters, but Joe Manchin is a political person. He's been in politics a very long time. It may not matter if the voters would like a third party candidate. What would matter to him is, do I have a real chance of winning? I'm not doing this because I want to throw the election one way or the other. I'm doing this because I want to win. And if he and his people don't think he can win, I don't think he'll do it.
Interesting. No, you may well be right. Well, that's probably a good place to end things. I want to thank everybody for tuning in as usual. Keep sending us those comments and letting us know how we're doing and what you want us to talk about. Bernie, do you have any closing thoughts?
Yeah, I just want to repeat something I said earlier. I think you, John, slandered me when you said that I wrote about, in my recent column about Hunter Biden and Donald Trump. That was about a kid who's making money off of corrupt businesses named Bozo, and his father, who claimed he knew nothing about it, was Bozo was Bozo Jr. I want to make this very clear. And his father was another Bozo. So that had nothing. I don't know even why you thought that column had to do with Hunter.
I think I must have Biden derangement syndrome, where I read this about this other character altogether, and I threw Joe Biden in there. I can't stop thinking about the guy.
I,
I think that's my problem.
I think that's it. Biden derangement syndrome. You should be ashamed of yourself, John.
I'll work on it. I'll work on it. I'll talk to my therapist about it. All right. Well, thanks a lot, Bertie. Thanks a lot, everybody. And Bernie, you have a great day. Okay.
You too, John.